50,000 years ago, a meteorite struck what is now northern Arizona. The meteorite was about 150 feet in diameter and was hardly slowed down while entering the Earth's atmosphere. So it struck with tremendous explosive force, permanently scarring the desert of northern Arizona with a gigantic meteor crater. And we're gonna see the impact site down this road. I am near Winslow, Arizona, and I am at the Meteor Crater. This is one of the largest meteor crater impact sites on the entire planet. It's super cool. Let's go see the meteor crater. Before viewing the meteor crater itself, we're going to go through the visitor center, which has some exhibits. In the Visitor Center's plaza, there's a really cool tableau featuring an astronaut and boilerplate 29A. This is a real Apollo test capsule. However, this one never flew in space. It was instead used to test the floats after splashdown in the ocean. It's pretty important that those flotation devices work. At the same time this capsule was being used for tests during the 1960s and 70s, NASA astronauts actually trained here at the Meteor Crater to prepare for moon missions. This is probably one of the best locations for it on the planet, as this crater very much resembles a crater of the moon. Also next to this petrified log, there is an alien visitor. They don't shy away from aliens here. And he is observing the human astronauts. Inside the visitor center is the Barringer Space Museum, a museum all about meteorites. While there are different types of meteorites, the one that struck here was primarily composed of iron, and this is an exact replica of the Holsinger meteorite, the largest surviving fragment of the meteorite that struck here ever discovered. We'll see the real one in a bit. Here's a display on the composition of iron meteorites. They are primarily composed of iron and nickel, but there's some other stuff in there. Nearly 50 different minerals that do not exist on Earth have been discovered in them. The first recorded crater-forming meteorite happened in 1947 in far eastern Russia. I believe this is a chunk from it. This newsboy is selling the Meteor Crater news, with a headline proclaiming that the sky is in fact falling. In earlier times when meteors have struck, that was definitely what people must have thought was happening. Several meteors have fallen into people's houses here in the United States. One fell in Sylacauga, Alabama, into the home of Elizabeth Hodges. But the impact did cause it to bounce off a radio, and it struck poor Mrs. Hodges. That was the first documented human injury from a meteor. She did survive. Also, 2 meteors have landed in people's homes in the same town of Wethersfield, Connecticut, 11 years apart in 1971 and 1982. A massive explosion occurred in Siberia back in 1908. This became known as the Tunguska event. It flattened 830 square miles of forest, and is believed to have been caused by a meteor, but no impact crater has ever been found, so it's still kind of a mystery. Clearly, that explosion was a lot bigger than this meteor crater's impact. Imagine if it landed anywhere else besides Siberia. Daniel Barringer was a mining businessman and engineer who became interested in the meteor crater, which had been discovered by local ranchers in the late 19th century. So his company made a mining claim to it, and President Roosevelt did give them the land patent to it in 1903. So his company started hauling mining equipment to the crater floor, and they drilled all sorts of shafts to find iron deposits. Barringer was interested because he thought a meteor hit this site. However, at the time, not a lot of people believed that. There wasn't much known about meteorites at the time, but he did eventually accumulate the evidence to prove that this is a meteor impact site. Barringer was searching for a full-size meteor. However, due to limited knowledge at the time, they didn't realize back then that the majority of the meteorite was vaporized on impact. Overall, his mining project of 27 years failed financially, but they did find some small fragments of the meteorite and discovered lots of very important information about meteors. Here are some rock samples from the crater. You can see how these same types of rocks were more or less shocked by the impact. These are tektites, fragments of rock that were shock melted and splashed after the impact. They literally remelted. Diamonds have been discovered here. They were formed in the meteorite at the instant of impact, so they don't count as gemstones. There's some shatter cones created during the impact, and local sandstone affected by a hypervelocity equivalent to 20 million tons of TNT exploding. Here's a simulation where visitors can create their own meteorites and destroy part of the planet with it. Alright, mine was a solid meteor. There's the first view of the Meteor Crater. That is really cool. We'll be heading out to the viewpoints outside soon. The Meteor Crater is so gargantuan that it's hard to tell all the little features and details from the viewpoints out there. There are some human impacts in the crater caused by Barringer, but there are also some unique natural features. Those were recognized by the work of Dr. Eugene Shoemaker. This was a water pipe used by Barringer's team during the search for the meteorites. This place does make one realize that meteor strikes like this one can happen again. Actually, we still have frequent meteor encounters, but a big one like this could be apocalyptic. Scientists now have the ability to detect and track asteroids, and predict those that may come close to Earth centuries in advance. The most notorious modern meteor encounter was the Chelyabinsk meteor. I remember that was all over the news in 2013, when a meteor streaked 15 miles over the Russian city and exploded in a light flash 30 times more powerful than the sun and sent a shockwave that damaged thousands of buildings and injured about 1,500 people. Here's a display about the meteorite that struck the Yucatan Peninsula about 65 million years ago and killed off 70% of all life, including the dinosaurs. Like I mentioned, the Apollo astronauts did training here at Meteor Crater because this crater is quite similar to those that dot the moon. This is the real Holsinger meteorite, the largest fragment of the meteor discovered by Barringer and his team. This is most of what was left of the 150 foot in diameter iron and nickel meteor that struck Earth right at this spot. That is pretty amazing. There's an old safe, maybe that was Barringer's, some smashed penny machines. There's also a meteor simulation that costs extra, but I'm not going to do that. And here's some NASA memorabilia. I'm outside to take a look at the Meteor Crater itself. That is a big hole in the ground. I've never seen anything like it. There are a few viewpoints to look from behind the visitor center. They do give walking tours to see other angles and walk the crater rim a bit, but I don't have time to catch one today. This footage does not do justice as to showing how massive this crater is. There's the visitor center and museum up there. There are some viewfinders that point out some of the landmarks of the crater, which are all very hard to tell from here. This viewfinder points to the raised strata level of the Meteor Crater. That rock over there is the size of a house. It looks very small from here, but it is probably a couple miles away. This Meteor Crater is about 3 miles in diameter. That's insane. It is really hard to tell, but at about the center of the crater floor, you can see the old mine shaft that's been mostly filled in, created by Barringer to find the iron deposit that didn't exist. Also, in tribute to the NASA astronauts who walked the moon after walking here, there is a cutout of an astronaut and American flag down there. I'd need a super zoom lens to get a good shot of that though. The meteor, officially known as the Canyon Diablo meteor, struck right here where I'm standing about 50,000 years ago, which in geologic time wasn't terribly long ago. The climate was a bit different back then. It was much cooler and damper, and was more of a grassland inhabited by giant mammoths and ground sloths. I think this meteor took care of the ones that lived around here. Also, this crater used to be 50 to 65 feet deeper, but natural erosion filled it in some. And believe it or not, this is only Arizona's second most distinctive hole in the ground. That's the view to the north of the meteor crater. And here is the crater itself scarring the desert landscape. I should mention that while Daniel Barringer was very important to this site, another man came on the scene in the 1930s named Harvey Ninninger. He was an actual meteoriticist, and researched and wrote extensively about this meteor impact. In 1942, he moved here to the Meteor Crater Observatory, which was close to the pull-off at Route 66 about 5 miles away, and he turned that into the American Meteorite Museum, where he continued to do much research on the crater. Now he started pushing to turn Meteor Crater into a national park and have it become federal land. The Barringer family did not like that, so they terminated his scientific study rights and kicked him out, forcing his museum to also close. The Barringer family does still own the Meteor Crater. They built and run the museum and services here, and I noticed they completely omit Ninninger from the displays here. So this meteor crater is absolutely incredible. Back inside the visitor center, there is an extensive gift shop and quite a few other facilities. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, visitors need to maintain a 6-foot distance from all other beings. This is the Basket Meteorite, and this was part of the Canyon Diablo Meteorite, a very unique piece of it. In the 1940s, a local rancher found it on his property, and it was displayed at the original visitor center here during the 1960s, but during that time it was stolen. It ended up being rediscovered in 2006 when a family in Wisconsin had it. It was being used as a counterweight for a kid's basketball backboard. They found out it was the Basket Meteorite, and it finally returned here. This is also really interesting. When Barringer's descendants were planning on developing this site, they tapped Frank Lloyd Wright to design an inn here at the edge of the meteor crater. These are concept sketches from Wright's Taliesin West studio for the proposed hotel and visitor center. Notice there's a viewing platform like the House on the Rocks Infinity Room that was going to jut out a few stories into the sky above the crater. That would have been awesome. However, as per usual, Frank Lloyd Wright and the family didn't exactly get along with the project, especially over the high costs inherent with any Frank Lloyd Wright structure. In the end, it didn't work out and they canceled Wright's commission. However, that would have been really awesome, and I do wish that got built. Anyways, that was the Meteor Crater, an unbelievable sight that I've been wanting to see for a long time. And it also serves as a great Route 66 roadside attraction. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe. Also check out my other videos from the region, including fantastic natural sites and national parks, roadside attractions, Route 66 history, and much more. Thanks for watching.